Several years ago, I was asked, when I first participated in one of these events, to explain wood culture, which I couldn't do. And so I've been sort of working toward it. So, a couple of examples. This is one form of wood culture. This is from Brittany. These are trees that are cut off at the top, maybe 10 feet above the top, maybe a little less, which stimulates further growth in tree branches near the top and actually below it. And the result is a kind of wall or fence or privacy. And that is certainly one kind of wood culture, or culturing wood, getting the wood to do something you want it to do. This is something else. Now this is just an ordinary tool, a wooden plane from eastern Quebec, that became a surface for expression by a chip carver. All right? So this too is wood culture. It is, in a sense, applying artistic ideas to what is a blank slate, but it's actually a plane. This is a different kind of wood culture. This is a small box, a coffer, made for keeping valuables, precious metals, coins, jewels if you had them. But there's something more important about this for our thoughts about wood culture, because the material, the kind of wood matters. This is English oak. And it's hard to see, but it's actually quarter-sawn oak. You can see the medial rays in it. The message here is that this box can be broken, but it will take you a lot of effort. And it's made that way so you can grab it quickly and leave if you have to. Another kind of culture, that is to say, ideas expressed that people transfer to the wood that are then expressed to other people who look at it. So now, we'll go on. So wood, it's a familiar source, an ordinary substance that's been common in people's lives for, as you now know, millennia. Its use and appearance sends strong signals of class, status, authenticity, aspiration, and other qualities less tangible or definable. And it is important what's important for me to realize, and others I think we already know here, that in spite of man-made materials, wood endures and persists not just for reasons of utility and convenience, but for its affective feeling, even romantic presence. Part of its continuing fascination or popularity is that it is seen as organic and associated with the natural world. Now, some conservationists argue this is the very reason we shouldn't cut wood. But consumers, and people who study cultural history, and many people here, believe it is what makes wood more desirable. It also endures because it's traditional, and ironically thought of as pre-industrial. It has a power of age, history, and a connotation of simplicity for some. All of these characteristics can provide some comfort in contemporary society. Consider Denis Diderot's Encyclopedia of 1751. There are lots of engravings of arts and industries of the 18th century. But in a real way, there's a comfort here. The comfort lies in the sophistication of mills and machines, of workers in clean and commodious surroundings. Look at them dressed. Dressed as if they were in some sort of costume drama produced by the BBC. Consciously or not, we associate solid wood with the long history of handwork, and most wooden things with centuries-old forms and designs. Venerable materials, tools, and products that surround us, even reproductions, form part of our collective and individual consciousness of the past, which is probably mostly imaginary. But wood is not, or was not, the benign presence in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It was as important as steel and coal, and I would argue it made the revolution. Before 1850, most machines, spinning wheels, hoes, plows, rakes, shovels, were made almost entirely of wood, with iron and steel fittings attached only for places of great wear or where you needed sharpness. Horizontally laid log buildings were built throughout the world. Scandinavia, Japan, China, North America. This is a small dog trot house in North Carolina, photographed from about 1910. It's a very simple vernacular building, and you can see the light part in the middle of the building. That's space. You can see it at the back. It's two separate rooms. A centuries-old example of this is a Stave. Now, I'm going to need help with this pronunciation. I think it's O-U. That close? I don't know. It's from Norway. It's about 1250. It's been reworked and repaired, but it's still a building of startling appearance. The upper story cantilevered out about 7 feet over the lower structure. Its massive structure provided inhabitants with a secure place to store provisions and a fortress against marauding animals and humans. But more than physical, it is also metaphysical, because it provides a sense of protection on the inside and a sense of strength to the outside. History, culture, and architecture are also entwined in wooden medieval churches and in temples and pagodas and South and Eastern Asia. This building was constructed in about 600. It burned slightly soon after that. It was reconstructed in 700, and it exists and is used to the present. The essential form of this church in Borgund is created from very large trees set directly on the ground, or in some cases in the ground, linked by horizontal members and interstices filled with vertical planks or half-round sections of the trees. Probably built sometime, first church is probably built like this, sometime before 1000. Now the interior connotes, if you've ever been in one of these, you'll never forget it. They can connote massive strength and great height, unknown in buildings in Norway and most of Scandinavia and a lot of other places where wood was built, until these structures were put together. Both the bulk of the trees and the height of the interior link the power of faith and the prospect of heaven and the power of the divinity writ in the trees. Right? Complex carvings, chamfering, cutout decorations, and painting were common in log buildings in Scandinavia and in nearly all parts of the world where there was sufficient lumber. And this Marai, the messages of religious devotion and respect for the past, are carried not by immense vertical spaces and massive timbers, but by the intricate symbolic carvings and paint, which are all over the outside and on the inside as well. But wood creates meaning in mundane buildings as well. And here I'm indebted to the great French phenomenologist Gaston Bachelard, who I never met him. He was dead before I was studying, but he taught me almost everything I know. In ordinary domestic structures, wooden framing and most sheathing, the frame and the outside skin, were culturally transitional woods located in the effective space between the forest and the parlor. They were not meant to be seen in the cultured or polished interior. Interior molding and trim were there to help refine the boys and the men when they were allowed inside. Smoothness, polish, color, carving, and refinement in the wood were supposed to promote those qualities in humans, and sometimes they did. The variety of woods and species and its infinite variation in color, grain, and figure made it an ideal field for artistic endeavor. Furniture excavated from tombs dating from the time of the Chu Kingdom, 475 to 21 BCE, in China shows sophisticated grasps of not only complex joinery, but also finishing techniques. Much later Ming period, 1368-1664 furniture makes European furniture look heavy, crude, and amateurish. There's a wonderful Chinese encyclopedia of furniture from 1607 that depicts all sorts of furniture and chairs and forms. Pierced chair backs, slender stretchers, lightweight seat frames are everywhere in these furnishings. The thinness of chair parts was in harmony with Chinese ideas of restraint. Complex joinery was testament to advanced craftsmanship and engineering expertise. You can't really see how complex the joinery is here, but it's interlocking. And there are no metal joining members at all. More literal references to cultural values can be found in, for example, Maori decorative woodworking and traditional weaponry, and carved walking sticks made in the American South, African carved staffs, and in the carved totem poles that you see here, in painted buildings of Native Americans on the northwest coast. The boats are uniacs, which are skin boats over wooden frames, and you can see the poles in the background. On these artifacts, the figures and faces are visual shorthands, pictorial representations of a larger story in oral form. Whoops, that would have been bad. Painted and stylized renditions these painted and stylized renditions are catalysts for memory that repeat or restate traditional narratives. This is an abandoned Tlingit house, photographed by Edward Curtis in 1899 on a remarkable exhibition of the northwest coast of the United States, financed by the tycoon E.H. Harriman. On this exhibition were the naturalists John Muir and John Burroughs. Edward Curtis was the photographer. There were a couple of painters. It was an amazing expedition, and its records are very complete. I urge you to take a look at it. It's the Harriman expedition, just because of the phenomenal staff that was there. Common to these religious systems is the belief that ancestors communicate with the living and must be respected. Throughout Indonesia, South America, Africa, the islands of the Pacific, carved burial effigies, house posts, canes, and other sculpture keep watch over living residents, helping them connect with the dead and prepare for their journey to the beyond. Now, as Peter mentioned earlier, woods are endowed with curative and magical properties on people. Peach kept evil spirits at bay for some believers. Trees struck by lightning were often treasured, and their pieces served as amulets. Some Christians believed that crosses made of rowan protected them from witches. And all sorts of trees, ash, elder, willow, yew, and all sorts of other ones that I'm not familiar with, were thought to cure a variety of afflictions. And current medical research has been examining the way cancers can be treated with the extracts of barks of certain trees and the like. But culture is wider than this. Flutes, horns, pipes were played throughout the world. From Imperial Rome throughout North Africa, South and Central Asia, in pre-European contact Americas, throughout Oceania, and in Europe. That's pretty much the world. Farmers and musicians from Scotland, Ireland, Eastern Europe, and a few other places developed the bagpipes. And stringed instruments, such as the nangak, were played in ancient Egypt, as were its descendants and relatives elsewhere: the lute, sitar, koto, dulcimer, zither, guitar, and violin. And if you haven't, go up to the big room where the carvers are, conveniently displaying all sorts of stringed instruments. I was thrilled when I saw that. It's not merely the relative ease in carving or boring of wood that made its choice. It made it the choice of so many instrument makers for centuries. Wood makes better sound. Okay? My own theory is it makes better sound, and probably it's everybody else's too, more nuanced and variable because there is so much variation in wood, even the same species, from the same board. Moreover, now this is where I'm probably going to get in trouble, I think it is figure that makes a big difference. So, curly sycamore sounds better than straight grain sycamore to some people. Okay? And if you're lucky enough to take the tour of the boat with the captain yesterday, who really is knowledgeable about different woods, you saw fabulous figure everywhere. So wood is preferable for almost everyone who plays a stringed instrument. I've had this fantasy that if you offered an accomplished violinist an amati or a solid gold violin, which one would he or she take? My first thought was, well, they'll take the amati. But of course, that's probably not true. They'd take the gold violin and sell it. And then they'd get an amati and maybe a Stradivarius. 2. So, wood is also associated with deep feelings of national identity. I'm going to give you one example. On September 13th, 2002, the Irish Examiner noted with alarm that the Royal Dublin Society has now revealed that most of the ash timber used in the manufacture of hurleys, the stick with which you play the game, is imported from Wales and Scandinavia. The 2002 RDS Irish Forestry and Wood Awards, now in their 15th year, that was in 2002, will feature a new special award for Irish hurley ash plantations and forests that are being managed specifically for the manufacture of the sticks. Similar articles appeared the next day in the Limerick Leader and the Irish Farmers Journal. Previous to this expose, there had been suspicion of this deception and more serious threats to indigenous ash hurleys, when the Irish government allocated £20 million to support the development of plastic hurleys in 1998. A small-scale revolt began with the founding of a resistance group, the Irish Guild of Ash Hurley Makers. They won. Wood in this instance had nationalist, cultural, and presumably historical associations. Whether Welsh or Scandinavian ash made a better hurley didn't matter. Many Irish citizens devoted to the national game were convinced that the quality of their national life and the virtues of national identity were compromised by imported wood, not to mention plastic. But the tradition invoked was itself a product of the late 19th century Romantic period of nationalism, rather than an unbroken line reaching back ages. Hurling, shinty, lacrosse, and many other ancient games fell out of favor among all except traditional players until the folk and craft revivals of the 19th century resurrected them. Wood can be whatever people decide it is, becoming a slate or a slab onto which all manner of values, mores, ideals, and beliefs can be projected or inscribed. Artifice of the hand and the mind transforms wood from a tree or a plank into shapes and spaces that transform activities, communication, enclosures into areas of meaning greater than the elements of design, construction, craftsmanship. Architecture, sculpture, and milling make belief systems three-dimensional, whether they're religious or profane. The comfort that wood buildings and furnishings bring or provide us is more often metaphorical than physical. It is the comfort of the park as opposed to the uncertainty of the wilds. The wood around us replaces the angst of the unknown and potentially dangerous wilds with the serenity of artifice and mastery. It is in the end sometimes an illusory ease and calm. The commercial world hurries upon its risky and commercial, sometimes disturbing ways, and the home is merely a temporary refuge. Our mastery is sure until the wood cracks and splits, ruining the table or chair, letting in the weather, or more spectacularly, causing the roof to fall in on us. Forgot the instruments. Sorry about that. Once in the history of the world, huge trees of nearly every species were abundant. With few exceptions, loggers and businessmen could not wait to bring them down. This is a monster sequoia. And you can see the two guys sitting there. You can't even see the end of the tree, nor can you see the cross-section. It's so large. What strikes the modern environmental consciousness is the fact that hewers and the tycoons were oblivious to the calculus of their work, as if the centuries it took to grow such specimens were somehow unrelated to the survival and future of the great forests. On the back of this stereograph are 3 paragraphs written about how the timber of the Olympic Peninsula in Washington would never be exhausted. Never, right? How could they even imagine that as an idea? Well, maybe it's just economic bluster and industrial bluster. By now we're familiar with that. We are fast becoming aware, though some still deny it, matters that the forest resources are dwindling, animal habitat is disappearing, and the future of the earth is imperiled. Wood has thus taken on a new cultural value or set of values linked to the preservation of the planet, perhaps akin to the canary in the coal mine. For those of you who aren't familiar with that particular phrase, miners would take canaries in cages into the coal mines, and when they suffocated, then they got out. Whoops. There wasn't enough air. Wasn't good for the canaries, but theoretically, supposedly saved them. The many links between wood and culture are in part a function of its complicity and random qualities. Wood persists in our lives because it's full of surprise and wonder. Each generation of trees and the boards they produce will be different from every other one, no matter how hard people try to make them uniform. Wood is, moreover, our link to the past, a marker of human culture and advancement, a field for artistic creation, and a revelation of nature's complexity. And a material, perhaps the material, that grounds us in our coexistence in the great sweep of life on this little orb that spins about in the firmament. Thank you.